What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Sit Down Saturdays, where today we're going to discuss the two Arcee options and my thoughts and feelings towards them. But before we do, I like to take these moments now to kind of recap if I feel like something has been misunderstood from the previous one. And I think for the most part, right, and this is true for comments in general, I think for the most part, people understand what I'm trying to say. It's just there's like a bell curve and there's a few outliers that just don't get it quite right. Let me reiterate. In regard to Sun Surge, I have absolutely no regrets with my purchase. Zero. It's not that I regret buying him. My point is that I enjoy my purchase and I don't think I will enjoy the other purchase $100 more. It's not that I'm sitting here like, ho hum, I already bought one. If that was the way I handled business, I would just buy another. It's not a money thing. It's a principle toward my collection thing. So, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about Arcees. Before we get into the two current ones, let's talk about other ones that are kind of on the market. So, there's this one. This is one of my first third-party purchases I ever made. It's like iGear, but wasn't iGear. And it was confusing. It was a confusing time. But this one's still okay. It's a little short for a Stormtrooper, if you know what I mean. So it fits in probably, it's like what we used to call a Voyager piece, where it was somewhere between Masterpiece, somewhere between Chug, somewhere in that spectrum. It's still a decent figure, but I'm getting ready to swap her out. The MMC Azalea, which for me was the first like kind of shatter point I saw in their armor. It was the first time where I wasn't wowed by an MMC release. But she's available. She fits in great with your IDW stuff. And then there's the Generations Arcee, which I think is a decent representation for a Chug collection. G1 accurate with a little bit of IDW flair. And I think it's fine. And then there's that oversized knockoff. I don't deal with knockoffs, period. If you don't understand the difference between third party and knockoff, fear not. I have a video coming one day, I promise. Some things take longer than others. Relax. But let's talk about what we have here. So, Sit Down Saturdays is always going to be a current and topical conversation about something that's happening. Regular discussion videos will be more conceptual, broad focus kind of things. Like a KO might just be a discussion. This is topical. This is between the Toyworld Arcee and the Fanstoys Arcee. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons of both. We're going to talk about issues that seem to plague both. And we're going to talk about the sexualization of both. Now, I understand for a lot of people that they have children that watch this and they're uncomfortable approaching this topic. I'm not entirely comfortable approaching this topic with my children yet either. Let them have their innocence, let them have their day. But the sexualization of Arcee is going to be discussed in this video. It's not going to be explicit and it's not going to be crude, but it is going to be discussed, so be aware. Let's start off with Toyworld. So there are a couple of interesting things here that I think she's not getting credit for. Number one, the ankles seem to be really interesting. It seems to have a rocker and tilts and everything else, and it seems to be incredibly stable with the shape of a high heel. I like that they included swords with her, or swords rather, and I think that swords have kind of become a part of her character due to some of the other representations that she's had throughout the franchise. So I like that they included it. Is it G1? No. Do I like it? Yes. Of course, I like the fact that they called her Leia. And I want to talk about what she's based off of, because a lot of people give Toyworld's designs, their robot designs, a hard time, and I don't think they understand the true inspiration. But what she's based off of is the Studio Ox design. And not to say that they knocked it out of the park, but there are certain things that people have been criticizing about this figure that they did do right. They just didn't do it the way you think they should have done it. And that's a difference. One of those things are the heels. The heels are pretty accurate to the source material. And the second thing are the elements of her backpack. Now, they're not done as accurately, but they're certainly in the ballpark. One other interesting thing that I think needs to be pointed out, and I think really needs to be discussed, is that she's going to come with swappable hands. Now, I know people might feel a way about that, especially people that are only buying Transformers. But I can tell you from my experience in dabbing into the Hot Toys, Figma, Mezco, Figuarts kind of realm, that I enjoy that option. Do I prefer independently articulated fingers? Probably. As long as they're done the way that they were done on MMC's Carnifex or on some of the Fanstoys recent releases. I don't like the way that Keith does them. And they have to be especially careful on a figure whose frame is this small and whose fingers are going to be relatively dainty. So I personally think that the idea of swappable hands, where she can do different sorts of dynamic poses built in, is a brilliant idea. And I'm not opposed to it whatsoever. If the figure had bigger hands, like this gentleman, it wouldn't make as much sense because you could engineer those moving pieces in there in a sturdy fashion. But you can't do that in a way that I'm entirely comfortable with this figure. So I think that the interchangeable hands is a smart way to circumvent the idea of being able to pose her dynamically and use her hands to express an emote. But of course, it's a matter of opinion. And now we have to talk about a problem. This alt mode, Mac. Jeepers creepers, am I right? What is going on back there, ladies and gents? It looks like you left a piece out. That's what it looks like. It looks incomplete. And it looks like she's got legs hanging off the back of her alt mode, mainly because she does. It looks like those situations where you get into bed and your covers are on kind of messed up, but you're like, oh, I'm not going to make my bed. So you just grab a piece and pull it up over your shoulders, and it exposes like your knee down, and then you got to fix that. It's just that she hasn't quite fixed it yet. It looks like a Great Dane trying to hide underneath a bath towel. Not much of a robot in disguise. So let's talk about the Fanstoys offering. Rogue. I think it looks good. It comes with a number of different faces. It comes with 2 guns, and it comes with a swap out chest piece, which, trust me, we will get to. I think it's incredibly G1 accurate per usual, and it looks to be extremely articulated, causing no real concern for dynamic poses. I think it looks just about as perfect as one can get. I don't really have any complaints. I also think that alt mode is on the money. Looks good, looks clean, looks complete, and it doesn't look like the hips are playing a game of peekaboo. Now, let's talk about the chest situation. This seems to be a bit of a hot topic, seems to be a little controversial. So she has 2 options. One is more developed than the other. But first, I think we should say that neither are obnoxiously developed to a point where it's an obvious objectification. This raises a number of concerns, especially for this modern era where everyone is very sensitive about everything. I'm the father of 3 daughters. I take stuff like this into account as well. But let's talk about it. Let's have healthy discourse about it and not run to Twitter with our hashtags. First of all, there have been animation differences throughout the cartoon which have had her drawn in proportion differently. This happens with all the characters, it happens with her as well. The chest is a part of her anatomy, the chest is a part of the female anatomy, it can't be ignored, it is a thing. Throughout Transformers history, it has been approached differently. Secondly, there is a history with this character and the sexualization of her in canon or in official media that has been strange. There's been some strange choices of panels in the comics. There's been some strange animation choices. And of course, they have had her in all ranges of proportions, let's say, throughout the animated series. And neither one of these third-party options are any sort of exception. Both have shown images of her in arguably inappropriate ways, but you know what? Arguably appropriate ways as well. I think that people are sensitive to this. I think there is an element of the female form that they are just trying to express. Now, does that mean that sometimes they have gone too far? Yes, it happens. Do I think we need to get all up in arms about it and take to the boards? Not necessarily. Do I think we should relax? Generally. There has been a unique obsession with this character from some Transformer fanboys throughout history. As a matter of fact, if you just go to DeviantArt and type in Arcee, stop. I was kidding. Never do that. Never, ever do that. Save yourself the mind-blowing confusion. But look, there has been a sexualization of this character throughout time. Maybe it's because she's really the only female character you think about when you think of Transformers. Maybe it's because she was introduced to a lot of young, impressionable gentlemen between the ages of 5 to 9, which science has proven has major impacts on their sexuality later on down the line. It could be a number of things. But I personally don't believe a chest swap out option that isn't obnoxiously objectifying is a big deal. For me, I don't care. I don't care if they would have kept it with one and it was the smaller one. I don't care if they would have kept it with one and it was the larger one. And I don't care if they ever gave you any sort of swap out option. I'm good with either. There's a lot of people that want to draw lines on the sand based on what they feel is their moral imperialism. I'm not that guy. Unless we're talking about KOs. Anyway, Let's look at the two of them together. And this is when I think it becomes painfully obvious. Now, we have to give Toyworld a little bit of leeway here because they are showing the colored image. And I think that we all can agree that the prototypes always look good, and it's not until we see the color images where things start really clicking in our minds as to which is going to look the best. So that has to be taken into account here, and as a result, I think that Toyworld is at a disadvantage. So let's not try to take all of the aesthetics into account and just look at proportions. Shout out to Keem or Cheem once again, I'm not sure. Shout out to that dude for the comparison pics. I love the way that he does it. But this one specifically, if you look at the proportions in terms of where the head lies to where the chest line lies to where the shoulder line lies to where the pelvis lies, the knees, and then the feet. Unfortunately, I think it becomes painfully obvious that Fanstoys, even though they're not showing full color images, which may affect how you see the figure, is overall a better proportioned unit. But let's not stop there. Let's look at the alt modes. And that, to me, the old Toyworld one really falls apart here. So, where are we at? I like Toyworld. I think they make a good product. I think they make a solid product. I have some points of contention that I have voiced, or at least tried to voice to them, in terms of how they approach scale, and how they approach aesthetic cues, and how they approach the masterpiece finish. But I think they make a pretty good product. I like their Cosmos. I think their Sea Spray is fine. I love their Constructicons. I think that they make a good product. Unfortunately, they're going against Fanstoys, who has a stellar reputation with a few blemishes along the way, and they make an exceptional product. So I am going to personally be going with Fanstoys. I hope to have the opportunity to look at the Toyworld one. I don't think it looks like trash. I just don't think it looks as good, and I don't think that it has the same consistent reputation that Fanstoys has. But the only way it can get there is by looking at their pieces as they are released, and I hope to have that opportunity. Maybe one will cross my table somehow, some way. With that being said, I know this was a shorter one, or at least I hope it was. I know we got a little long-winded there, but like I think that there is a sense of hyper sensitivity today, and in general. I mean, we've seen comedians lash out about it, from Jerry Seinfeld to Chris Rock. And I think that it's important to keep a level head, understand that sexuality is part of many female characters. I do understand that it's not necessarily part of Arcee. However, if you even look at her G1 cartoon design, if you were to approach it in the fact that the white is skin and the pink was the uniform, it sets a precedence from Jump Street. Should it have? I don't know. Do I think it's inappropriate? Her get-up, her curves, the female form that they were trying to capture? No. No, I don't. Do I think that sometimes we go too far in objectifying her, both from a sense of manufacturing and distributing? Yes. Do I think that we go too far in objectifying her as from a fan base perspective? 100%. Shout out to 4chan and DeviantArt. I have seen things that'll make your hair turn white. I drew an Arcee piece a year and a half ago for my buddy Robert, and I didn't objectify her. And I've drawn many women, and some I have definitely objectified. But I didn't objectify her because I don't necessarily think that's the more forefront aspect of her character. But I do realize that there are character design elements that are definitely trying to perpetuate the female form. And with that comes sexuality. That's just maybe an inconvenient truth. But I think they both look good. I think the Fanstoys one looks better. I'm hoping to take a look at both, but I can't make any promises. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. I won't be responding to comments, but I do read them all. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.